Hello, I'm Bob Allison, WB1GCM, ARRL test engineer here in San Jose, California at the AMSAT Symposium. I ran across a really fascinating gentleman here, and his name is Carroll Swain, W7DU. Hi, Carroll. Welcome here, and thank you for joining me.
I'm glad you invited me. It's just great to be here.
Fairly interesting fellow, and could you tell the viewers here, what year did you actually start out in amateur radio?
Well, my license was issued in 1958 in December, and I actually got on the air in January 1929.
So your first license in 1929?
Yes.
Oh, that's terrific.
I actually received it in December of the previous year,
Mm-hmm. And what was your first radio like that you used?
Well, at the time, my parents and I lived on a farm, and we had no electricity. And I got acquainted with a ham, a genuine licensed ham, on another farm about a half a mile or a mile away. And he took me under the wing and taught me how to pass a license exam.
Mm-hmm.
And he's quite a guy. I tell you, he's the guy that should get some publicity. Of course, he's gone now. He's about 5 years older than I. But he got me started in this thing. And the equipment we used in those days, both of us were without commercial power. We used storage batteries to light the filaments of the vacuum tubes, generally, and we used B batteries, as they're called, 45 volts per battery for the plate supply.
Mm-hmm.
And each of us had a one-tube transmitter. It was a Hartley oscillator running with one tube. I started out with a 201A tube.
Oh, yes.
And
battery set
probably
tube.
put out the order of a watt, I suppose, something like that. I had no idea exactly.
Well, what band were you on?
I think we were on mostly the 40-meter band.
Hmm.
Although my friend, the person who got me started, was Cormac Thompson, W7ACA.
Hmm.
And he was an excellent operator, and he was able to work Australia and New Zealand in those days with nothing more than a 201A and a watt or so of power.
Must have had a pretty good antenna.
He did fine, and later on, after I got more experience, I did pretty good myself.
Very, very good. Now, could you say that amateur radio led you into a career of electronics?
Absolutely. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Because I learned Morse code and got to be fairly good at it. In fact, 1 year after I got my license, I went back and got what was called in those days an extra first license, which required 20 words per minute.
Yes.
And since I was pretty good on CW back then, I went to a YMCA trade school and studied about a month or two. All it took was a couple of months, I guess, to get commercial licenses for shipboard use or for broadcast station use. But I couldn't get a job that way. So instead I went to the University of Washington, started in engineering, and on my second year I managed to land a job on board ship.
Oh my.
As a radio operator.
Wow.
The ship was the USS Discoverer, a ship belonging to the federal government, and there was a coast and geodetic survey, and they were making maps, maritime maps of the waters in the Aleutian Islands.
Oh, sure, the wire draggers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I managed to get a job with them as a radio telegraph operator on their ship for 2 summers in a row. It was very fortunate, the logistics of it, because they only worked in the summertime when I went to school in the wintertime.
Right.
And I was able to go 2/3 of a year of college each year, and 1/3 spent on board this ship. This lasted for a couple of years, and then on the third year and final year of my college, I worked in the American Pacific Whaling Company, which was based there near Seattle, had a whaling station in the Aleutian Islands, and I worked 5 months that summer on their station in Akutan, Alaska.
Oh, that's very remote.
And we were processing, they were killing whales, and the station, of course, was processing. One of the funny things about that is that the place smelled normal to us, but when the ship came in there, the passengers all went as far away as they could because the place didn't smell very good.
Certainly. I can only imagine.
Yes.
Yeah.
So actually, my amateur radio experience was what allowed me to finance my college education. That's what it amounted to.
That's a great story. And during the war, what did you do, the war years?
Well, it happened that I got my engineering degree in 1940, in the summer of 40. And I worked briefly for the Boeing Company and didn't like it very much, so I quit and went to work for the federal government in the Coast and Geodetic Survey. And the job I was telling you about previously. And at the time of the Pearl Harbor attack, I was working for the federal government's aviation, Civil Aeronautics Administration, it was called in those days, Civil Aeronautics Administration. And I was in Fairbanks, Alaska when Pearl Harbor occurred. Well, one morning I was batching it with another ham in a little old log cabin there in Fairbanks.
Bashing it means pounding some brass there.
Yeah. We had an amateur station.
Yep.
We had he worked for the Weather Bureau and I worked for the civil aviation outfit. And so one morning when we woke up and turned on the receiver, we discovered a rather dramatic thing going on the air. And we thought it was some kind of a play or something. Turned out to be Pearl Harbor.
Oh my.
That's how we did. I don't think Fairbanks had any broadcast stations at that time, so that's how we happened to learn about a Pearl Harbor attack.
Oh my.
And what I was doing there, and what our agency was doing, I should say, was building radio aids to navigation and communication stations for aircraft use. And we also had a point-to-point system for relaying communications around the territory of Alaska. And we spent the entire period of the war there, except for one period of a couple of months when I was sent down to the States to try to organize some transportation problems. I didn't leave Alaska permanently until after the war was over.
What was radio like as far as what was required for a typical airport in Alaska at the time? And what did you actually have to construct radio-wise?
Well, each station had some frequencies that they monitored, 24 hours a day.
And this would be what, below the AM broadcast band, right?
Well, a lot of them were shortwave.
Oh.
There were shortwave and I think one frequency they used that was on longwave.
Yes.
If I remember right. My memory is a little indistinct about these frequencies, but at any rate, when I first went to work for them, I worked as a maintenance man in Fairbanks, and that's how, as I mentioned, I happened to be when the war started for us. We saw incidentally, we saw one thing, though, that before the war started, when the British were still fighting the Germans, before the United States was involved, one of their ships came into our port in the Aleutian Islands. Well, this is back when I was still with the Coast Geodetic Survey. And I remember that they put lights on their sails when they left to go because they figured there were German submarines, perhaps. This is before we were in the war.
So this was a German sailing ship?
No, it was a Canadian ship.
Oh, under sail.
Canadian ship.
Yep.
But Canada, of course, was in the war when Britain was.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And this brought home to us that we were maybe in for the same thing, you know. It was really something. And that ship, they told us anyway, that they had made started on the Atlantic side and gone through the Northwest Passage. It was a ship that had sails and also diesel power. And it was Canadian. Anyway, I kind of got off the track there.
Well, so the landing radios at the time, what were they like? There was some sort of glide path signal.
Oh, yes, yes. You know, when I go to an airport nowadays, I think they're still using the same kind of glide path equipment. At least it's parked at most every airport. That's a glide path that worked on VHF frequencies. And it gave the airplane information on how to, what altitude to stay in as they came down, and it generated frequencies, a signal that allowed the pilot to glide in towards the airplane.
Yeah, right. If they were left or right of the airport too.
Yeah.
I think it's A and N or something like that.
Of course, this is the glide path and the localizer, the other one, the one that tells you right and left.
Yes.
Those were later on. I work. We're sort of mixed up here now because after the war, I mean, I was transferred from Alaska to Washington, D.C. headquarters in 1946, I guess it was, immediately after the war. And that's where we were doing the engineering for localizers and glide path for purposes of landing aircraft. I don't know if they use them on takeoff or not. It was landing, of course, was the main thing.
So I'd like to ask you, do you still get on the air today?
Oh, yes. I'm on the air once or twice every week, you know. I got interested in satellites fairly recently compared with my time on the air. The satellite work has really revived my interest in amateur radio, because when I discovered that there was such a thing as AMSAT, I took to it with great pleasure. And I used to have very, very good contacts via satellites. That was in the days when you had two high orbiting satellites, and both were functioning and working good. You could sit there and chat with people on these satellites, and they were so high, they were such a high elevation, that they would cover almost half the Earth.
That's fantastic. That's ideal.
Almost half the Earth. I could sit there and talk to Australia, New Zealand, places like that, via satellite, and it was just great. things aren't so great nowadays.
Well, that's really late in your ham radio career, so even no matter what age you are, you can really get into amateur radio satellites. One last question for you.
Yes.
How do you like ham radio today? Where do you think it's going to go? They have software-defined radios that are out there today that operate with computers. It's amazing what they have. But do you think amateur radio has a bright future?
Well, I hope so anyway. I think one reason that we are presently having trouble attracting young people is that nowadays they already have a handheld way to communicate with their cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't used to have that. And that's kind of a handicap, but I do believe that, my gosh, it's such a great hobby that we need to get the young people started.
And I really believe, and AMSAT believes, that the young people would just love to operate through amateur satellites. That's a great attraction for people of all ages, but especially youth in schools, is to actually have
And
the
you know,
ability.
it's very scientific, I tell you.
Mm.
There's a lot of science involved in
Besides
satellites.
radio, yes.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much. Carroll, Swain, W7DU, thank you for joining me here at the
bet.
AMSAT Symposium.
Yeah, well,
It's been
thank
really
you for
terrific.